Hi everyone, so this is the last item of the day. We'll try to sum everything up inside this last, let's say, 40 to 50 minutes of the lecture. The last part deals with, let's say, some more advanced concepts of Google Analytics, what you need to do, how is it really used in practice, and the last item of the day would be the new generation of Google Analytics, what you need to do with it, what's the next steps, and what's your priority, let's say, for the next year. So the first part deals with measurement reporting. So this is, let's say, once you start collecting and once you start gathering all data and want to report on anything, so your first and foremost concern is, do you have all the data prepared and what you're going to do with it? But there is a simplified version of reporting in terms of analytics that you only use one tool for it, meaning use, let's say, Google Analytics to report on everything. But the point is you can't only use Google Analytics. Google Analytics shines when you use it in combination with other tools, which tell a bit of a different story. Google Analytics tells a story about your users, your acquisition, your fleet, but there are other tools which help you, let's say, get some kind of an idea where you stand with others, meaning where the market stands with the demand for your product or a service, and on the other hand, where your, let's say, main competitors are in terms of, let's say, the situation where you are currently in. Where to advertise, what to advertise for, what are the most common keywords, most in-demand keywords, or let's say geography based on, let's say, some historic data which was collected before. So when doing any kind of reporting, regardless of the tool, there are a couple of, let's say, main things that you want to do with reporting. So the first part is to determine this, let's say, initial goal. So with reporting, it's not only to say, okay, in the past month, we had, I don't know, X bookings. This is nice, but this kind of information exists in many places and it's probably much more accurate than in Google Analytics, because as it stands now, and with most digital analytics tools, you can only track a portion of the traffic or portion of users which come to the site. There is one specific reason for that, and that is user privacy. So let's say about 80 to 90% of users are trackable, and they can be tracked as soon as the user says that they consent to all of this. There are a couple of ways, or let's say a couple of categories of consent, where the least being don't track me at all, and the best, at least for us, the best scenario is to track with marketing tools, marketing pixels, and use every of the collected data point for marketing personalization, ad personalization, site personalization, and similar. So we basically collect all of this data about the user behavior, even some additional data points, and then use it to personalize the whole experience. But getting back to the reporting part, and what we can actually get is trending. So it doesn't matter that the absolute number is correct. It means that we can report on accurate trends. Because if we measure the same thing, but we continuously have this same error in measurement or inability to measure, then in this case, we can say that the trend is probably going to remain accurate throughout time. So when we talk about trending, what data do we want to be presented as a trend? So the first part is the market demand. So this is probably the starting point when we do any kind of budget estimates, when we do any kind of situation analysis, meaning where do we want to advertise, what's the best country to start with, where do we want to push most of our budgets to. So that's probably the first thing that we want to do. Then the second part is if we already have, let's say, the data from Google Ads, if we are an active Google Ads advertiser, there is a specific report which tells a very, very significant part of the story, and this is auction insights. So basically, it says If we advertise for a specific keyword or a set of keywords, we can see who else is advertising for that specific keywords and where is the competition in comparison to us, meaning do they invest more or less? And in some ways, we can even determine on how do they spend their budget. Basically, do they want to saturate the market as much as possible, meaning that for a specific keyword such as Yacht Charter, Croatia, Croatian, or whatever you are using. In this case, we can see that some of the, let's say, advertisers are having, let's say, an approximately 50% of the market. So their ads are present for the 50% of these queries in Germany, let's say. And we are currently at the same level. There are additional metrics which tell a bit of a different story, or better say, explain the story much better, which says where our position of the ads is in comparison to the others. Meaning our position can be, let's say, first place, second place, third place, below the rate, and so on, while the competition can have much better place for advertising. And what is usually said is that there is a high correlation between click-through rate and the position in the search engine results page. Meaning that if your ad positions at a number, let's say 1 in most cases, then your CTR, click-through rate, is going to be much, much better than, let's say, the other advertisers on the list. Because the first result, the first, let's say, spot in the ad slots is clicked much more often than anything else. Especially if you look at what's clicked on the second page and so on. So basically this number exponentially just decreases from page to page. So this auction insights generally gives you an idea on a much deeper and much more detailed level of who advertises on which keywords and who can you compete or who you should or should not compete with on a specific market. There are other things which were mentioned in the last lecture, which tell basically that you can also trend data for your on-site product or category demand, which helps you determine if there is any kind of A, peak, or B, seasonality, meaning that you take into consideration a much larger time range, where you can then see where there is significant increase in a longer, let's say, time period, where you can say that this is your season. There are two ways to look at it, basically, because on-demand, on-site doesn't necessarily mean booking on transaction. It means just that the demand in search or in general your budget spending has increased, and you can see a larger number of users coming to the site and performing some kind of an action. While this happens, you can start also determining if there is any, let's say, meaningful pattern that happens from year to year, which would tell that a certain product is in demand, let's say in March, but the bookings and everything else start, let's say, late May or something like that. It really depends on the type of boat destination, inbound, basically where the customer comes from, based on the transport and everything else. But the point is that you can start to, let's say, see these kinds of patterns, then acknowledge these kinds of patterns, and later on use these patterns in your advantage. The last one is basically this on-site sales. Now, the ROPO, research online purchase offline, something else. Probably Italians use it the most. But this means that although they research online and they try to book everything, they in some cases, they come to the spot and book there, while on, let's say, vacation, a longer one, with probably a smaller time span on how they want to book their service. When we say on-site sales, it's some kind of an information when you get, where you get a lead on the site. And it can, but it doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily the case that on-site sales and on-site demand are the same curve, basically, that they follow the same trend. It doesn't necessarily mean that case. What could happen that in a state of a lower demand, you could probably have more transactions than in a state of high season. because in the state of high season, there is a lot of competition. People do a lot of price comparison and so on and so on. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a lot of transactions in that high demand season. For all of these, let's say, tasks, we use a couple of tools which help us on the way. Mostly they are Google based. We are also mostly using any kind of a Google tool because they are highly connected, interconnected between. So once you get some kind of an insight from Google Ads, you can start seeing that in Google Analytics because they basically speak the same language. But in any case, from all of the data collection that you can get, first-party data is Google Analytics or Google Ads. But if you want third-party data to be present, meaning market data, demand, or whatever from all of the advertisers and everything else, you will probably need to go a bit further than these two main, main tools. There are also additional tools. Some are paid, some are free to use. But I give you a bit of a different perspective. They're basically joining all of this data together and trying to tell a specific story. We will go through all of these items and tools just to give you an example of what can be done. But the point is that as soon as you get any experience with this tool, it's going to be much, much more easier to do some basic yearly work with analytics and with planning. So planning is probably the part of your work which is going to benefit, you're going to benefit it the most, because you're going to be much faster, much more insightful, and your decisions are going to be based on market state and data collected, which is a good thing. So in your, as we said, the goal for reporting, well, just skipped a lot. The goal for reporting is finding an opportunity. It's also finding some kind of a error or a negative behavior of either the users or a traffic source or similar. But the point is you need to have some kind of a goal. If the goal of reporting is just to report, to have some kind of a monthly document ready, then it's, in most cases, it's wasted time. You should do something else with it. When we say find opportunity, this is some usual things that we try to look inside either Google Analytics or all other of those aforementioned tools. So the first thing is just to make sure that you see any kind of a positive trend. So once you see any kind of positive movement for a specific metric, for especially sales or demand in a specific category of products, then in this case you try to scale it up. So you amplify the volume of an already organically increased trend. So that's the first thing. Then you find opportunity in cases where there is high or low volume of competition. In terms of, you see high volume keywords, low competition situation, where you can then, let's say, get in the niche and pull as much as you can from it, as long as it's cheap enough. So, and as long as if it produces any kind of a meaningful result in probably digital advertising. In most cases, these are keywords and these are, let's say, landing pages and so on. When you see any kind of performance above average, which is quite important, because if you're looking at a budget that you spend on, let's say, ads or Facebook or whatever, you need to determine which part of the budget or which part of the product is actually making the result. So if you are reporting on a budget level, meaning a total, a sum, we, I don't know, made 100 bookings last month, then this is only a part of story, because in some cases only one destination or one type or category of boats is in some cases going to make a whole lot of difference. So if your entire, let's say, fleet did a specific result for, let's say, past month, it could be that there are hidden winners inside this whole mix, which you should know, and you should try to, again, amplify the effect of, let's say, a growing group. So in this case, try to determine the details and then try to amplify it, either by knowing which keyword led to these sales, which channel, which geography, or whatever. But the point is you need to know these details in order to increase this specific moment. There is one additional thing when with opportunities is anomalies. Now, anomalies can be negative and positive. It's basically a significant change that happened versus the average, which happened, let's say, many, many weeks or many months before that. So when an anomaly happens, it, as said, it can be a negative or positive thing. If it's a negative thing, you need to stop it. If it's a positive thing, you need to scale it. So this is what we usually do. And whatever you find as an opportunity or as a, let's say, even a negative one, let's say a negative context of an interaction which happened or a set of interactions which happened, always try and do this test and scale. So when you want to change something, if you want to change something, if you need to change something, try to do it in a, let's say, a closed test, meaning that you control the changes and then you can control and measure the effect. There is also one additional tool which is not directly mentioned here. It's called Google Optimize, also from Google. And it's a tool which helps you perform A/B tests. So you have an A variation and B variation of a, let's say, same experience. But you change specific things. You can change copy, you can change incentives, you can change the way you communicate basically with the user. But the point is that you want to see if any kind of a change in, let's say, advertising or on the web page itself creates any kind of a positive traction. What it usually is, let's say, a subject of a test is a step in the process. So we want to optimize, let's say, from the product page or a service boat page, we want to test how can we improve the follow-up step rate. Meaning, we want to increase the percentage of users that go to the next step in the process. Why is that important? Because in this case, we hope that this is going to increase the overall result by the end of the, I don't know, month or a quarter of a season or something. The point is when and if you get into testing, testing is highly difficult to do in seasonal industries, which are highly influenced by a high seasonality vector, let's say. So in these cases, you need to test as much as possible, but you need to test with high volumes so the results and everything else get back as soon as possible. Because if you test the entire season, the end effect, the end results, what you learned in this testing process is going to be available then later next year, or it should be implemented later next year, because then the context and everything else is changed, but you want to move it to the next season then. So long tests and everything else are nice because your sample and everything else is going to be good, hopefully. But then the implementation will need to wait for the same context to happen next year, unfortunately. So when you do this research and reporting part, combining data for Google Analytics and for, let's say, the other additional tools which amplify your knowledge and experience with the market, you first start with the market part. So you don't start with yourself, you start with the market part and then align yourself with the market or try to disrupt it. So that's the key point. You can go with the flow like everyone else, or you can start to make some changes and basically be present at times when no one else is. It's tricky, it's risky, but someone needs to do it because when the competition and everything else is highly saturated, and for example, in Google Ads, you have 4 top spots for ads. So if there are 5 competitors, one is always going to be missing. So in these cases, you need to see where you even have a chance to be present at the rate of spending, at the rate of clicks, at the rate of budget, which everyone else has, and which you can afford, based on, let's say, the percentage of revenue which you make inside a month or a week. So in this case, when we talk about market, there are some tools which are quite easily used, and they take care of the trend, basically. So it's not a volume, like a volume per se, but trending data, meaning where is higher intensity of searches instead of something else. So you start with this tool, which is called Google Trends. It's quite a simple tool. It's free. It's highly accessible. You can even play with it with some additional tool. It doesn't only have to be, sorry. It doesn't have to be used only for work. It can be used for something else. Just a sec. Let's enter the first term, and we're going to select this first part. So we're not going to select for the search term because this is highly, let's say, narrow term. Yeah, it can be a high volume term, but there are many other, let's say, terms related to the topic itself. So once you want to do this, you can actually choose one of these two. So it's either lowercase charter or a higher uppercase charter. It doesn't really matter. But the point is you want to see the volume of this. And we don't want to see the worldwide part because we don't have the money to advertise worldwide. We'll probably narrow down the search to some specific areas. So in this case, let's use Germany because it's probably it's the nearest part. Just a sec, let's change this one. It seems there is something wrong with this. Now it works. Okay. So in this case, you have some items which you can change to change your complete analysis, which says you can select the country, you can select the topic, then you can select basically the time which you want to analyze. Because if you want to analyze trend and seasonality, it's a good practice to select as many years as you can, if they are valid in your analysis. You don't want to do 2004 because it's a prehistoric time. You're probably going to use let's say 5 years. 5 years should be just enough. What you can learn from this in this case is that there is some kind of a seasonality. It's like slow moving waves throughout the year where you have this peak, let's say season in demand, which is June, July, and then starting to come down in August. Now, this doesn't mean that you are selling in these months. This means that there is a high demand for the keywords in this particular category in these months. So the usual question is, when do we start? Where do we stop advertising? So if you're going with the flow, you would basically do, I don't know, the most logical explanation would be that when there is demand, I will advertise there. But the point is, if you want to advertise early on, you will probably saturate a lot more of the current demand than if you are going to use June, July, and August for that. Why? Because there are many more competitors present at that time. There is much more volume, but the point is then the advertising is going to be a bit more expensive. So with the auction, the bidding system and the number of competitors inside, this is probably going to be highly expensive. Now, in this case, when we go down, now we have, let's say, the main trend for this topic. So this is Yacht Charter. Let's say this is for Germany and for the past 5 years. Based on this, we can see that for this particular topic, the most, let's say, in-demand things that you can see or spot basically for Germany is that there are, let's say, Saxony, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, I don't know how to read this one even. German is a highly difficult language to do. Schleswig-Holstein, Brandenburg, North Rhine-Westphalia, and so on. So these are the regions where there is a lot more intensity of searching these kinds of keywords than in others. So that's the first stop. The second stop is definitely this one, is that you can see which kind of, let's say, queries make up all of these trends. On the left side, you can see the related topics, which are topics related to this one. So what's usually is the case is that once people search inside this topic for, let's say, yacht charter, they usually search additional or make additional searches which are combined in this part. So when you see this North Sea, that means that, let's say, yacht charter and North Sea, in this case, are combined. So this is probably not your audience, especially if you are working with destinations in Croatia. So in this case, this is probably not for you. And once you are working with Google Ads, you're probably going to try to exclude all of these interests because you're probably going to waste money from that. on the right side, these are related queries. So these are queries related to the topic, which are, let's say, mostly highest on volume, or show the most positive trend in terms of year-over-year trend, and a high rise in queries. In this case, you can see that compared to the previous period, you have an increase of plus 800%. So this is a high steep keyword increase in positive trend, which, if you see this keyword as relevant to your business, should then be used, especially this part. Let's say luxury yacht charter, ADAC yacht charter. This is probably not something that you want to do, but Yacht Charter Croatia, that's a different story. So you have couple of, let's say, rising queries, which you should definitely include in your SEO, and you should include it in your ads, or even display ads, basically, because if you place this kind of a keyword in a display ad, there is then is expected that people are going to type it in. So if you do something funny inside the display ad, then definitely buy this keyword in Google Ads search, because you're probably gonna be the only one, or be the minority that's going to use this keyword, and it probably means that it's going to be a bit cheaper to use. Now, out of all of these keywords, the top keywords, meaning the top highest volume keywords, which are used for this specific topic, or lie inside this topic, are these ones. So yacht charter, charter yacht charter Croatian, yacht charter Holland, and Müritz yacht charter. Okay, so these fives are the top fives, where yacht charter, just the general keyword, and let's say combined with charter yacht, which is a reverse, generate the most of the traffic. What that also means is probably that it's going to be probably the most expensive keyword, not because it's expensive as it is, but because many people are going to advertise for it. SEO for this is going to be almost impossible, because everyone in this business is probably going to want to be positioned to number one for this specific keyword, or let's say a set of keywords, because there are probably going to be some variations to this, especially in terms of yacht charter, and then enter country, destination, micro destination, like a city or something like that. So this is what you can learn from this tool alone. Now you can enter additional tools, keywords or topics. You can do, let's say for German, it's Segelboote. Segelboot. Okay, sailboat, it's a ship class. Let's say we can do this. It's highly popular, so this is something that you need to consider as well. But let's use sailboat search term. Yep, this is a bit different. This picture is a bit different then. Then when you see, let's say, sailboats as a type, and I don't know if this is a book or something, but let's say top keywords, Eferia sailboat, if you were a sailboat, BDO, a boy called sailboat. Okay, these are quite strange, basically, keywords where you can then choose to select if you want to use them or not. But let's say if you are using copy, or creating copy for your website or application. So this is one of the first parts where you're going to check your keywords in terms of what are the related queries. So if you want to bid on sailboats, Segelboote, or whatever you want, just make sure you are checking the area, the geographic area where this is most sought for, and that this lies into the industry that you want to tackle. So it doesn't mean that it doesn't have any significant connection either to a book or a movie or anything like that, because then the advertising and everything else is going to be much more expensive. In terms of, you are going to spend a lot of money on people who are not actually looking for boats, but for a specific movie. This can also happen, and it can be quite big of a nuisance at the end. So once you have all of these trends throughout the year, you know where the keyword is searched for, what are the related terms and everything else, then you can go, let's say, to Google Ads. Now, in Google Ads, you can get a feel of how much money you need to spend for a specific keyword on a specific market throughout the year. Now, these are estimates. These keywords and prices which you get inside are probably not going to be the things that you get as a report result, because many variables afterwards decide on how much you need to pay for a specific link. Quality of the site, speed of the site, history of the account, SEO on the site, and so on. So there are many, many factors that are included in this auction wars in Google Ads. So as much as you can, let's say, fix and optimize your site, even for SEO alone, this will definitely benefit the end result, which is in this case lower CPC. So just go for it. We're going to use, let's say, Yacht. Just a sec. Yacht Charter. I believe it's correct, but if not, we'll do it again. Get results. Nope. We're going to change this to Germany because we can then target. We can even add, oh, just a sec. Language Croatian, or we don't want Croatian, we want, let's say, we can even do English, but let's stick with German. Yep. And now we get to some, let's say, much more serious data here. So the first part is we get this seasonal trend for a specific keyword or set of keywords. You can add more keywords like boat charter, Ausflüge, Bootverleih, Auslandsjobs. You don't need that, but it's tied to this. Not sure why, but yeah, you can. So in this case, once we entered, let's say, this keyword, we also have additional keywords as an idea for this. So this is also one additional point if you want to, let's say, broaden your SEO or see which keywords need to be included in your campaigns. So in this example, when we entered Yacht Charter, we can see that the average monthly searches is 2.9K. It's almost 3K, let's say, searches per month. And you could, let's say, potentially pay. So this is a spread. This is an estimated, this is a spread from 2.2 to 10 kunas, which is quite a large, let's say, range when you work with it. The best way to proceed when you do any kind of estimation of a budget or what are you going to do with your budget or how big does it need to be is that you get this worst case scenario up and running. Meaning that if you want to be, let's say, 100% present in your searches and you want to be, let's say, on top of these searches, then just multiply this number, the average monthly searches, by with top of page high range, and then you will get an estimate of how much you need to spend for a specific market throughout the month. As in this case, so this is quite a bit of a danger. There is high seasonality. So what you get here is 2.9 per month. But as the distribution in this month can grow, let's say, 2-3 times, specifically in May till August time, then you need to be aware that in these couple of months, you're going to have to spend at least 2-3 times more than your average. So just be prepared for that. In addition, Google Ads has become smarter in a way where if you, let's say, look for a specific keyword, it can already recognize if there is any kind of an existing brand tied to this keyword, or is there any, let's say, just a sec, regions where you want to sell. If you see here, so the regions which are tied to, let's say, Yacht Charter, in this case, are Ostsee, Mittelmeer, Nordsee. So in this case, you would probably, if you don't manage these destinations, you would probably want to exclude or make these keywords negative keywords because you don't operate on these markets. So this is also quite valuable and information, because if you would only advertise on Yacht Charter, then you would probably spend massive amounts of money on, let's say, things that are not relevant to your business. And this is probably In most cases, this is the biggest waste of money and time which, let's say, charter business can do with doing advertising, definitely. So please beware of that. Okay, once you have this set, so you have keywords, you have estimates, you can do budgets and everything else, then you go to a specific tool which is designed to give you an overview of you in comparison to your competition, your position, and everything else. So these are high estimates, meaning high-level estimates. So these are not low-level detailed estimates because they cannot use your first-party data. These are estimated based on, I don't know, some kind of data pool which they get and they buy it in from user history, behavior, from browser extensions, and so on. But the point is they can collect a nice amount of, let's say, data points, which they can use then to identify you as a player on the specific market. In this case, we are going to use, let's say, yachttrend.com. Let's do Germany. I'm not sure if they are operating there. Yep, they are. And in the US, it seems so. So this site, let's say yachttrend.com, has an authority score of 40. I believe the grade goes from 0 to 100, where 100 is the highest. Then you have how many keywords do they have in their spread, and what kind of traffic do they generate, and so on. So you get some kind of an idea of what their health is, so you can do competitor analysis, even some kind of a BI analysis in terms of what do they advertise on, what kind of keywords do they have active. So let's even try Croatia, because Croatia is also in their database, at least for this tool. You have additional tools you can use for this. Just a sec, Croatia. So this one is called SEMrush, and it's a pay tool. It's not as expensive if SEO and everything else is your, let's say, playground. So it's worth investing. It's about 150 US dollars per month, something like that. There are even smaller paid plans, but you can get the data from it from time to time, let's say. It's a good thing if you have a friend or a colleague which works in the same domain or a different domain, and they all also use it, so you can join, let's say, usage of the account. It's some kind of a gray area if you can or not, but you can share, like sharing a cab. What you can learn from this is, let's say, your competitors or your top organic keywords. So which are those? You can learn about the positioning of a specific competitor on the market, meaning how many of these keywords which they rank for are at the first 3 positions, 4th to 10th, second page, 3rd to 5th page, let's say, and then everything below. Because in most cases, you want to be here. So the first position, you want to be clicked, you want to be found as soon as possible. There is one additional thing to note, that you have this competitive reporting suite present as well, which tells a bit of a different story, where it lists. So this is a, let's say, a widget-like representation, a small table, but there is a detailed representation of all of the competitors, and then you can see who you are competing against. Meaning, if this is your site, you can see that Click and Boat, Samboat, Zizu, NCP Charter, and similar are your main organic competitors. So the way you want to see it is you want to benchmark your prices against theirs, your offer, and everything else, and see if this is the right competitor base for you. On the right side, you have this competitive positioning map, which says, let's say, the size and your volume, the number of keywords and the volume it generates from, let's say, organic. Where in this case, you can see that the lead competitor from this group, this tight group, is Click and Boat. So we have entered Yacht Charter, but we got that basically their main competitor is Click and Boat, based on the keywords that they have on the site and for the keyword that they rank on Google. So this is something to consider later on, and I don't know, one of your KPIs could also be that you want to lift from this position to, let's say, the upper right quadrant, which is a good place to be in this case. You have many keywords, high organic traffic, which is definitely a good thing to do. Now, in some cases, not all, You can also get advertising research, meaning that you can see all of your competitors' ads, text ads, what keywords do they bid on, and so on and so on. So it's quite insightful once you do any kind of research here. There is one additional thing to note, which is, okay, we have entered the com domain. As seen here, there are multiple domains. So Yacht Trend is multi-domain space, meaning that each country basically has its own, let's say, version of the content. Yeah, so this part is, I believe, done. So you can get some estimates on your competitors. You can see what's your current position, and then you can screen your increase in position and everything else, meaning if I need to invest more in, let's say, paid, if I need to invest more in SEO, but it's definitely something to start with, and then use this same tool, because if you change tool, the image and everything else is probably not going to be the same. But if you are going to start with it, continue using it, and then see that your position is increasing either for the specific market, because you can change it from, just a sec, you can change it from Croatia to UK. It depends on what your target is, what your market is, where do you want to grow, where do you see any kind of an issue, and so on. So this is your, let's say, starting point. Once you have this spread ready, let's say your market. So we have gone through, let's say, the keyword planner, Google Trend, Auction Insights. There's going to be a representation of that later on. So this is the Auction Insights. Now, I didn't deliberately place an auction with charter companies because it could be an issue. So this is a client which obviously does something with, I don't know, beauty, cosmetics, I don't know, products. But this is the information that you can get from Auction Insights. So whenever you have an active account, this information is available for you, either via your agency or either if you are using it by yourself. So the information goes like this. So you, for the keywords that you want this impression share for or Auction Insights for, you have 65% of the market, which is a good position to be in, especially if it's a high volume keyword, if it's something that brings you conversions and so on. Your absolute top of page rate, so meaning that you are on the absolute top on the first position, is out of this part, let's say, for all of the impressions that you were in 66% of the cases you were on the first slot, first position. That means that there is always room for improvement, meaning if this is a high converting keyword or a keyword set, what you need to do is increase your impression share. So that's the first point. And then the second point is make sure that your top page rate is as high as possible. Because if you start to spend budget and everything else, each next percentage that you get from the market is going to be more and more expensive. And you will probably suffer from diminished returns, meaning that for each euro in addition you invest, you will probably have less in return for each additional budget. Yeah. Now in this case, you can also see the competitors, the main ones, with their, let's say, impression shares for the same keyword set, and then you can see your size against theirs, meaning how much do you spend, and then start to notice how much do they spend. This is especially valuable in terms of if you are not on the first spot, but if you are, let's say, third, fourth, fifth, I don't know, and you have 20% of the market, and then you see a couple of competitors having the budget for, let's say, having about 60% of the market. In those cases, you can get some kind of an estimate of how much you need to spend to get to that position where your main competitors are. And the keyword planner, which we did before, could definitely help in this case. Okay. Just get back to the presentation. So the market part, the presentation is probably going to be shared with you. It's most certainly going to be shared with you afterwards. You will see which tools you can use to deliver which kind of insights. And in this case, you read it like this. So tools like Keyword Planner, Search Console, Google Trends, Auction Insights are used for the market research part of the research stage. And you want to find search volumes, which you can do in search planner. You can do competition level, which you can do in keyword planner and auction insights, and SEMrush, which we talked about a bit before. Then you can get the competitors part, also SEMrush, and then in auction insights, and so on and so on. So it's not only the question if you are familiar with Google Analytics, like a tool which tells the whole story, because it doesn't. There are additional supplemental tools which you should use to get a much wider picture about what's happening on the market. And this is especially important if you want to see if you are a big player, what's your market share, share of voice of the service product that you offer. Competition-wise, we already sorted through all of these items, but the point is most of these cases can offer multiple answers, multiple categories of answers for this part. And then you have this, let's say, product category demand on site, which is taken from Google Analytics, because this is your data, this is your products, and so this is something you can use. And it's quite simple. You just basically go to the behavioral part of data, go to pages, top pages, and then see which of the products were mostly sought for. So this is what you do next. Then there is the next part, which is the transactions part, and this is what we discussed in the previous session, where we said that each of these product items, product interactions which happen on the site can be widened, can be enriched with additional data to better describe the product. So a product can have an ID, a name, a brand, a type of boat, category, destination, or whatever you want with it. So the point is, if you want to report on trending of this specific product, you can also report on a specific attribute of that product. So it can be color, it can be year built, it can be number of persons, it can be, I don't know, whatever you want. The point is you need to supply all of this data to Google Analytics to be accessible there, and then you can report on it. And in addition, you can combine it with all of the other dimensions which are found inside Google Analytics. So it's either geography, it's either, I don't know, you can do channels, mediums, do any kind of attribution process of trying to determine who sold that specific product and so on. This was also discussed in the previous session, where you can see how many days do you need to sell a specific boat or book a specific boat, or how many sessions or which channels are included in the road to book a specific charter. So it's not an easy, it's basically a more advanced approach to analytics. It definitely is. You cannot do it out of the box, meaning that you cannot just open analytics and do it there. You need to do the implementation part, the planning part, and collect data, I don't know, for at least 2-3 months, and you need significant volumes of data to be able to create these kinds of reporting. So as soon as you start with it, the better. Okay, so these are some ideas that you can use for advanced analytics and advanced reporting. In this case, it's also based on activation, where you can basically add additional describers to data in Google Analytics for better understanding what's happening. This is especially valuable if you work with any kind of search engine, internal search engine, when you have I need a boat in, let's say, Šibenik, and I want it for 7 days. I want it in May. I want it to be for 8 people, and I want, I don't know, some specific service on top of all of that. So if you look for, let's say, and if you want to track all of these, then these are quite highly valuable information or data points to collect. Why? You can do retargeting based on all of these attributes. You can do demand trending on all of these attributes. Let's say that people come to your site, but they're looking for something that you currently don't have, or you have in a minimal amount. Let's say boats that can carry, I don't know, 15 people or something like that. This is something that the market is demanding, but you don't have this kind of a product in your fleet. So the point is what to do with it. The first point is to communicate it clearly. What are you specialized in, what you can offer, and so on, and see which keywords are leading users to the site which are, let's say, doing these kinds of internal searches. So we want to exclude all of these keywords and exclude the budgets because it's spending money on things that you cannot operate with. The same applies to product attributes, which are mostly relevant to things like e-commerce and product interactions, because you can see the boat in the list. You can view the boat as a detail page. You can check out the boat. You can add it to cart. You can book it. There are many interactions which where you work with the product or what happens with the product throughout the user experience. If you collect all of these data points, then you can see anomalies in terms of which of the, let's say, boats was most viewed, but in return it was not booked at the same rate, meaning that there is high interest for this specific boat, but there is just not enough booking for it. Meaning either the price part or something else is making this kind of difference. So this is just, let's say, like a small item list of what you can track, what you should track. You should research it and see if it's meaningful for your site, and then definitely afterwards push it to your developers. And in this case, these are, let's say, some simple items that you can improve your reporting, where you could probably find much more success than just using standard Google Analytics implementation. Yeah, for the last part of the presentation, so we have this data activation. So data is not just dormant inside reporting, you can also activate it. So these are just some simple steps to do it. So the first part, what you do with data activation, is create audiences. So audiences are basically pieces of information which you send to Google Ads, Facebook Ads, and Google Analytics, and you segment people based on their behavior, and then you can use this audience to target advertising messages. Meaning, if you only or if you have a segment of people who are highly interested in, let's say, Šibenik, then in this case you can create a visual, you can do targeting, you can do special offer for Šibenik and everything else based on this audience. So this is why audiences are used. Then we have the conversions part, which are done two parts. Basically, there is two ways to look at it. With conversions, you do it in analytics for reporting, part of success and everything else for all channels, for all of the site. And you do, or let's say, track conversions for the optimization part. Because most of the ad platforms, ad tools nowadays, use this kind of a method called smart bidding. So this is a machine learning algorithm which runs in the background. And if you supply it with good enough data on the backside, meaning user behavior, user interactions, micro conversions, any kind of a signal which makes a specific person more valuable. In this case, this algorithm is going to use this data and provide you with results. The result being the tool is going to bid more and be present in the auction systems much more for the persons they, let's say, or it predicts is going to convert more likely. So this is the underlying idea. And the last part, which is a manual part, or let's say brain labor, in this case, is that you build testing hypothesis. Meaning, if you see some kind of an anomaly or something happening on the site, you start building these test ideas and then start to push them in action. Meaning, A/B tests, multivariate tests, any kind of a testing which can help you determine which kind of an experience is better, providing more efficient user experience in the end. Okay, I believe that's it for now. And no questions, it's late afternoon. Everyone's deserved a break. Thank you.